Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you today for the annual conference, the third annual conference of the Dynamic Competition Initiative. And I'm opening on behalf of David Teece and Bo Heiden as well. I want to say a few things. So we situate where we are today. So when we launched in July 2022, we shared a sense of intellectual puzzle. We observed increasing divergence between the traditional analysis of competition, which often focuses on rising market power and stagnant economies, and the emerging empirics of the digital economy, defined by substantial dynamism, new firm creation, investment, and innovation. This was the puzzle. I'd like to have my slides, if that's possible. So in many ways, we found ourselves in the same position as a famous economist, Ronald Coase, when he reconsidered liability rules. So Coase noted that we often ask the wrong question, focusing on who's right and who's wrong, between the cattle raiser and the farmer. Remember the example, who's right and who's wrong. We didn't ask, and we do not ask, the better question, which is the best institutional arrangement that is going to produce the best social outcome. Coase would call this meat versus crop. Is a relevant question that judges, decision makers, and economists should ask themselves. This is the problem of social cost. The problem of social cost is not right versus wrong. We realize that if the law of competition policy does not update its priors, it risks becoming an obstacle to the very welfare goals it seeks to achieve. Our goal at the DCI has been to urge the inclusion of features of the economic system that are so obvious that they tend to be completely overlooked. That inclusion could probably bring about a substantial modification in the structure of economics. Coase himself, in his Nobel Prize address, made a remark about our profession. I'm going to quote him. Quote, "If economists wished to study the horse, they wouldn't look at horses. They'd sit in their studies and say to themselves, what would I do if I were a horse? And they would soon discover that horses would maximize their utility." At the DCI, we have decided to go out and look at the horses. That's what we do. So at the end of the first annual conference here in April 2023, our good colleague, Professor Alexandre de Strel, concluded the conference capturing the gravity of the task. He asked for 8 more days in Florence. Alex likes Florence a lot. It was more a hint of the time he needed, and that was needed for this group, this entire group here and back then, to translate complex observations about innovation, business organization, and management into administrable legal rules. 8 more days. What mattered in Italy, 8 more days can take a long time. We are at the third conference. What mattered more, though, was an observation that was made by Jason Potts at the end of the same conference, that a Florence consensus was emerging, built on 4 broad propositions. You can see here on the slide. The first one is innovation also drives competition. Second one is the firm and its internal capabilities, not just the market, are the primary drivers of innovation. Economics is the method we want to follow, but economics have to be enriched by diving deeper and better into endogenous innovation capabilities, maybe moving beyond partial equilibrium, and maybe sometimes abandoning the equilibrium obsession. The last observation is that economic prosperity depends on competition policy to some extent. Competition policy is not an end. Competition is not an end. Competition policy is a means to an end, economic progress. All right, so like I said, academic time is not real time. And these 8 days transformed into a year until the second annual conference. By October 2024, at the Dynamic Competition Operationalized Conference, we began to identify specific research topics. 5 of them: ecosystems, AI, mergers, capabilities, and welfare. Very broad boxes. We thought that these concepts would eventually define the boundaries of a research agenda. In parallel, the Draghi report came, providing a lot of macro and microeconomic tailwind to what we are trying to do, validating the assumption that competition policy is fundamentally a component of industrial productivity. When Draghi talks about competitiveness, what he has in mind, it's from Draghi himself, is productivity. So Jason Potts this time, tasked with telling us how to further develop the Florence consensus, told us, issued a warning. He said, we have a veneer of a field, a collection of folk theorems and scattered syllabi, but we still lack the structural depths required to transform what we do into a movement, a coherent intellectual movement. So with Bo, we took that message very seriously. And over the last year, we have attempted to flesh out a research agenda that has more manageable targets. Okay. So we are exploring digital mergers, the geography of innovative firms, the cross-fertilization of competition with capability theory, and we're also looking at what we call broad spectrum competition, which is competition across markets. To do this, we hope to be able, and we want to work through case studies and sectoral analysis, as Ariel Packes last year invited us to do. This is why you see on the conference program several roundtables that will discuss specific sectors and industries. I want to say that we are also growing as an institution. So our small team, that is Carla, Bowman, David Teece, and myself, is expanding. So we have Selçuk, Dr. Unakbas, where is he? Who defended his PhD thesis yesterday. A round of applause for the young Selçuk. Has joined the team. He just finished his PhD. He's already on a contract with us, and he's going to be working very hard. We've also been joined for a couple of months by the invaluable wisdom and experience of Frédéric Génie, who's at the UI with us these weeks. It's phenomenal to have Fred around. And next year, Pierre Régibaud will join the EUI too. We'll do a visit at the EUI, so we think we are going to exploit and leverage these intellectual capabilities. I think our intellectual bench is getting really stronger. I also want to say that we've increased our collaborations with external non-resident fellows. Richard Gilbert in Berkeley is working with us on empirical papers. David Bosco in Aix-en-Provence is involved every week in the management calls of the DCI and helps us with a bunch of tasks. We're also having an event every year in Paris. Connie Helfet is working with us on developing literature on how to feed the competition policy with capabilities, concepts, and theories. So I want to say this because I want to insist that what we are here for the long game. This is not like a one-shot thing for social networks. We want to build literature And we're inviting people here and elsewhere to help us do that. If you're interested in the ideas you're going to see on screen today, talked about today, join us, come with us. We're ready to support and find the assistance needed to write these papers. About 10 days ago, we launched the Journal of Dynamic Competition in Washington, DC during the ABA spring meeting. This is a strong incentive, we believe, in knowledge production and dissemination through open access. So there is a journal, and I think this is a nice exhibit for the proposition that we've been growing over the past weeks. Now, I want to say something, and that's very important. The growth of the DCI is extremely hard to sustain. We must raise funds for work that is not goal-oriented. But blue sky, you can see, these are not the issues that policymakers talk about every day. These are not the issues that you necessarily see in competition policy cases. We do not engage in evidence-based policymaking for agencies. We are not building the evidence for agency calls to build the evidence and back policy options. But we're neither trying to build advocacy-based evidence for potential funders, corporations, law firms, economic consultancies. We are not interested in doing that. So we sit in the middle and we benefit from funding from people that are more interested in the blue sky research than in the goal-oriented research. And this position is very hard to sustain. So if you know someone somewhere who has a lot of money to give to a blue sky project, please contact us. All right, I want to say maybe 2 last words. I know this is a topic that speaks very dearly to Bo. The reason why we're doing this is inherently a moral one. Dynamic competition is a moral argument. It's about the long-term welfare that stems from investment, risk-taking, entrepreneurship, and innovation through technological progress. It's about the wealth of nations. So the question for today's conference is, quo vadis? All right. So in the legend, I sit here on this pulpit. It's interesting to talk about that legend. In the legend of the Appian Way, Peter, fleeing persecution, asks the vision, Jesus, that he encounters on the road, quo vadis? And the response in Latin is, Romam eo iterum crucifigi. I am going to Rome to be crucified again. This is a reminder of the price of relentlessness, to challenge existing paradigms, stress test existing paradigms, re-examine existing paradigms is to invite friction. It is to go against the grain of decades of settled practice. But I think we are ready as a group today. We are going to talk about this, to face the friction. If a paradigm shifts, helps Europe and the world contribute to higher prosperity. And with that, welcome to the 3rd annual conference of the Dynamic Competition Initiative. Thank you.